Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's Friday, the sun is shining, the weekend is coming, and we have our May breakfast briefing. So delighted to have a full house here this morning, to have you all here to learn a little bit more about data to insight and what that all means. Before we kick off, just one thing to remind you that if you want to tweet the hashtag, which is not GoggleBB as I was searching this morning, it turns out it's actually GoogleBB. So that's the handle that we'll be using for the morning. And if you have any questions, we're going to save some time at the end. There'll be about 10 minutes where you can ask any questions and anything to do with today, or if there's something that we're not covering today, there'll be a few of us hanging around up here afterwards, so feel free to grab some of us. But I'm delighted today that we're talking about data to insights, because we talk so much now about how all the consumers are so well informed. We talk about Irish people, they're going online, they're going on their mobile phones over 160 times a day. They're looking up review sites, they're looking up websites, they're on social media, they're looking on search engines, they're getting information everywhere. So we talk a lot about that side. But today what we're going to talk about is from our side, from our perspective as marketeers. How do we look at the data that they're giving us, and how do we really get insights and make sure that not only do we know where they are, but how do we find them and how do we get our message across to them? And we're really, really lucky today to have an amazing speaker, Laura Bracken. She's been working with clients of all different sizes for about the last 4 years and in the Irish market. And this is her last time on this stage as a member of the Irish team. So we're very sad to see her move from the Irish team, but very happy that she's moving into an amazing brand role. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to get her to promise to do a brand talk for us all next year. So I'm very excited about this, and I'd like to welcome Laura Bracken on stage.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you very much, Marie. So I am Laura Bracken, and this is my last time speaking on behalf of the Irish team, sad face. But I am going to a new role called our Insights Lead for EMEA, and that's with a team called the Brand Evangelist and Executive Strategy Team, or for short, the BEES team. And my role there will be to work with advertisers to really uncover deep insights about their brand and their business so they can start developing strategies to go even bigger and better on the web. So I'm really excited that I've been asked to do the insights piece, because it's really teasing me up for next Monday. And I will leave about 10 minutes at the end to take any questions that you have. So what are we talking about when we talk about data? And what are we talking about when we talk about insights? We don't really have a problem with data here in Google. We have a lot of it. But we asked all of our advertisers over the last few years, what do you guys want? And how can we partner with you to help you make the web work better for you? And they told us, we want you to help us understand our customers and our consumers. And we said, okay. So we developed a set of online tools, they're all free, to help everybody be able to understand their customers, their brand, their industries online. But actually, that's not always that easy either. So I'm going to walk you through today a number of our tools and how to use them, particularly how to use the data that you get to overlay it onto your business to get the most out of the web. I want to focus a little bit, first of all, on what the difference is between data and an insight. Data makes your briefcase heavy, insights makes you rich, according to the former CEO of Unilever. And it's something that we've concentrated an awful lot in. So as I said before, it's not difficult to find data anymore. Data is everywhere. We can find it on our phones, we can find it with these tools. We have big data. Google has really big data. But I want to help you interpret that data. How do we find patterns? How do we make interconnections? Are there themes? Are there patterns? How does that give you an idea of what to do and how to go forward? I want to help you do that today. So when we think about an insight then, insights need to be novel, they need to be credible, and they need to be actionable. They need to inspire action. They're kind of unexpected, but most of the time they're actually really, really obvious. And it must actually be something that makes you want to go, aha, okay, I can use this. And when we think about that, I'm going to bring you to my first golden rule of today, which is kind of thinking about the so what. Before we do that, I want you to keep in the back of your mind today, intent versus context. Intent is something we have a lot of. Actually, by the time you finish reading this slide, Google will have been asked 500,000 questions. So we know what people are asking. What's interesting about this when we overlay context is why they're asking. Where are they asking? Are they asking on a mobile? What time of the day are they asking? When we start really probing the information that we have and the data points, that's when we start to convert this into an insight. And the most important thing, as I said, is how is that even relevant for me in my business? And that is the first golden rule. Data is not insight. Insight, funnily enough, is insight. You always need to ask yourself, so what? Why is this valuable to me? How can I use this? Why is it even relevant? And if it's not, throw it out. It's just data. So we have 4 main categories of insights here in Google. We might use different terms for them. This is really what we look at most of the time. The first is the consumer insight. How are people feeling? How are they behaving? How is that behavior changing? It's a real sentiment or their behavior towards something. And we have lots of that, and we can get a lot of that, as I said, from Google search, and we can infer a lot of that from what they do on the web. The second is category. Some people will call this industry as well. And for me, I find this really, really, really interesting. And it's always really important to look at the broader picture as well. So when we talk about category insights, we're talking about trends, things that are changing, disruptions in an industry. How are things evolving over time? And this starts giving us a little bit more of, I suppose, an insight or a way to look at opportunities that we can tap into before they even become a trend or they become the norm. The next is brand, and people tend to jump to this one. So the clients that I work with jump to this one before they do anything else. What's happening with my brand? How do they feel with my brand? And it's an obvious place to start. And we can help you here in Google understand that, understand the associations people are making with their brand. I will warn you, it's not always what you want to hear, so you need to be a little bit wary. You need to be ready to hear the truth. But we can help you get real deep insight into what kind of questions people are asking of you, what do they want to see more of, or what are they co-searching? So they may be co-searching you with a competitor, for instance. That's a need to know, but paired then with a category insight, that's very, very rich. And the last one is Zeitgeist, and I can see a few puzzled faces there. Zeitgeist is what we call, and a number of other people call, kind of the state of the world, the changing culture, the world at large, how people are feeling, what are they doing, when it's nothing to do with a particular issue. So for instance, you might start seeing at the end of the year, we do kind of wrap up of all the searches around the world in 2016. We start showing you what people are watching on YouTube. How is that varying from what they watched last week? Is there some breakout new content that people are watching? And it's good to keep your finger on the pulse of all of these things, to see how the world is changing, how culture is evolving, how populations are evolving, and what does that mean for the wider frame of you, your brand, and your consumer. So these are the 4 kind of insights we'll be looking at today. And I'll bring you through them and what tools you can use for what types of insights. As with most things, they're very interchangeable. So you can actually use a few tools for the same thing. Now, I do need to warn you about something. Unrefined data has the possibility to swallow you whole. You could go looking for an insight and not come home for days, and I mean that. It's important to think, what am I trying to do? You need a purpose. So a good friend of mine, myself, once said, diving into data without a purpose is like going swimming blindfolded. It's uncomfortable, you don't get anywhere, and you actually might die. So you won't die, okay, you won't die, but you can lose a lot of time, and I've definitely been victim to this before as well. Going into reams and pools of data is actually a hazardous task when you don't know what you're looking for. And there's a misconception that you can go into data and get a bit of inspiration. Maybe you can get a bit of a thought-provoking kind of data point and go, that's interesting. If you don't have anything to tie it back to, you're kind of screwed. So this brings me to my second golden rule, which is all about building a hypothesis before you start. Hypothesis is something with limited evidence. So this is not something to spend loads of time on. And I've been here myself before, building up a hypothesis, agonizing over what it can mean. You guys know your businesses, you know your industries, you've been in this before. You're going to have a hunch of what's already going on. So just go with that and get cracking. Golden rule number 2. Set a hypothesis and look to prove or disprove it. And again, this goes back to the kind of brand piece. Sometimes we don't like disproving things. We want to think that we are right, and you are for the most part. But when it comes to data, you need to accept that there just might be the possibility that you might be wrong. And how good would that be? At least you're on the right track then. So don't be afraid of disproving a hypothesis. This is firmly to keep you anchored on the ground so the data doesn't swallow you up like we talked about. Now, we're going to get into it. So I want to practice what I preach. I'm moving into that role next week, so I feel like I've done that. So we are going to practice what I preach today. And we're going to go on a journey as a group. We are all now part of a fabulous tea company called Tearific. All of us. We all now work there from now. And we want more of the Irish population to drink more tea. We like tea. We think they like tea. And we want people to drink more tea. We want to influence them to drink more tea. But we're actually losing market share in the hot beverage market, in the hot beverage category. And that's a problem because we need to make more sales. So our hypothesis, I'm sure you'll agree with me because we all work in Tearific, is that we think tea just might not be that cool anymore. We think people are drinking specialist coffee from hipster cafes, which isn't great. So our mission today is to use Google tools to go through, as Tearific, and understand what can we find out about our category, our brand, our consumer, that can give us some ideas about how we tackle this, and how do we get people to drink more tea. Are you up for it? Wow, okay, it's early. I didn't expect a response. Okay. So, I'm going to bring you through my first and maybe favourite tool, which is a lie because my favourite tool is later on, but this is my nearly favourite tool. And this is the hub. So when I talk about our 4 categories of insights, actually this spans them all, which is very handy. And it's Think with Google. Does anybody here use Think with Google? Raise your hand. Oh, we have a few. Okay. And I'm sure you'll agree with me that Think with Google is an amazing resource to have online, completely for free. It's all updated. And we actually have a dedicated team here in Google, and they publish articles literally every day. So what you'll find on there is kind of Google research, infographics from around the world. We have thought leadership pieces, industry reviews. We have case studies. We have playbooks. We have really cute videos. And it's just an amazing, amazing repository. Again, warning, data swallowed up. Don't go there unless you're looking for something, because it will literally take days from your life. But it is there, and you can sign up for it, and you can get pieces delivered to your inbox to refine it down. So I'd really strongly recommend everybody do that. In this case, I want to kind of bring your attention to the fact that we can go to Google or Think with Google before we even pull a data point, which is amazing when you think about it. This stuff is pre-made, ready insights for you that a team has done somewhere else. So you can just read it and get on with it, which is amazing. So I went on to Think with Google, obviously, because Tearific are trying to challenge the tea category. And within about 3 minutes, I found this amazing article about search insights in the tea and coffee space. Amazing. It's literally done for us. We can all go home. No. So it's a bit too small to read here, but basically there's 3 key charts that I pulled from this article, which took me about 2.5 minutes to read. The first one was beverages and how people are reacting to them over the last 4 or 5 years. The first one is without tea and coffee, and you can see water there is at the top of the chart, which I was happy to see. The second chart down here, so the second coloured chart down here, is when we overlay tea and coffee onto the non-alcoholic beverage category. And you can see that the other lines are completely dwarfed by tea and coffee. So we now know that we are one of the 2 products in that category that dwarf all other options, which is brilliant. More interesting again is the green chart here on the left-hand side. This is basically a small study of characteristics searched with tea and coffee. So for every time somebody searches for tea online, they're very likely to search for this other characteristic, which we have in this graph here. And what's coming out here is that very, very tall one here. The dark green is tea, and underneath it says recipes. People are looking to use tea in different ways. And here we were in Tearific thinking they just wanted a cuppa. This is interesting. The other few things that are coming up in this chart is diet and calories, and that's actually for tea and coffee. So people are now getting health conscious. Okay, we're going to have to address that. That's really interesting too, and that is literally before we've even pulled a chart. And this is something that I think is one of the things that I've had to learn along my journey with insights. You don't need to reinvent the wheel all the time. There's a lot of stuff here, and you can use your headspace and your brain space for getting under the skin of it and how it applies to your business. When we think about our golden rule number 1, so what? A more new feature on Think with Google is Marketeer's Almanac. So what we've seen in the last few years is that our traditional media calendar, or these traditional moments that we expect to see, that the shops, you start seeing Easter eggs after Christmas, you start seeing Halloween after summer, Christmas after Halloween, they're really traditional moments that we know consumers are going wild for offline. But what we started to see online was that there was different moments, there was different seasonality. And instead of giving you guys access to the old traditional calendar that you probably all know about, we've actually developed Marketeer's Almanac, which trends out this seasonality for our biggest moments online. So do we have anybody who's in the midst of 2017 planning with their businesses or their brands at the moment? Yeah, a few of you. You'll probably know the terrors of looking at your calendar and going, I don't know what I should really tap into this year. There'll probably be one or two key moments that really pertain to your brand, that you have the right to play in that space, and this does that for you. So you can basically scroll through this. It's an interactive. There's links and infographics to various different occasions, and you can read those straight away and understand if that should be on your calendar. So that's definitely one to check out, and it's literally only released last year, so 2017 is up to date now. And this is golden rule number 3. We only have 5, right? So we're not going to have loads of golden rules, but there's 5. And this is, don't reinvent the wheel. We may have already done it for you. And I really mean that from something that I've been kind of, I suppose, victim to before. You don't need to reinvent it every time to make it bespoke to you. You need to overlay your business and your challenges on it. And that's something to think about when you're trying to refine back your time and make the best use of your time when you're planning, because we're all busy people. So the next one I'm going to bring you on to is consumer. No, nobody's that excited, but you will be. So consumer is an interesting one. You have to think about what people's behaviours are, and it always isn't pertaining just to your business or just to your category. So there's a little bit of practice in actually twisting what a consumer is thinking and making that relevant to you when we really overlay our so what on this. So the first I'm going to bring you to is Consumer Barometer. Has anybody used Consumer Barometer before? Okay. So Consumer Barometer is something, again, completely free and completely up to date that we commit to keep up to date. And this is a huge, huge, huge repository of people's answers to questions we've asked them. So what you're going to find on here specifically is a huge repository, as I say, of research, shopping, and viewing behavior. So it's very much behavior-centric. You can literally cut the data for every country in the world, which is absolutely amazing, particularly in Ireland. We don't always get a lot of resources here in Ireland. You can cut it by, if you want to go a little bit deeper than that, you can cut it by industry. So you can ask somebody about groceries versus media versus shopping versus how they feel about an app, which is really, really customizable to every single business. And you can also build your own graphs. So there's a function on there that allows you to start building your own graph to see, that's interesting. What time are people watching video in my country, in my industry, and all of that as well. What you also find in Consumer Insights and or Consumer Barometer is curated insights. So we basically already have narratives that we've picked up on. We've basically analysed this data, and we're giving you the trends straight out. And the last thing you'll find in Consumer Barometer is four different audience narratives. So we've basically interviewed different segments of the audience as well. So you'll find moms on there. You'll find millennials on there that we all want to talk to at the moment. You'll also find things about the really, really digital savvy kind of audience. And we also have one that's particularly interesting to brands and advertisers, is people who are very much have a strong brand affinity. So people who will very much look at a brand and what they're doing and will base their opinions on those. So are loyal and not loyal. These would be our loyal audiences. And they're literally good to go. You can just go on to Consumer Barometer, look those up, and then there's literally about 5 or 6 literally statistics there that will show you what their behaviour has looked like over the last year. And we update that annually. So it's an amazing resource to have. But back to Tea-rific. So we're going to use Consumer Barometer to have a look at our tea problem. So I wanted to know, with obviously tea being such a big deal in Ireland and all, where did we really stack up? Were people really looking at brands when they were choosing their tea? So I asked Consumer Barometer, Consumer Barometer, how many brands did people consider before making a purchase? Now, I would have thought 3. That's what I've always kind of come to know, especially in the consumer packaged goods space. I would have thought 3, maybe 2. It's 1, right? So nearly half of these people, 41% of these people said that they only consider 1 brand at that point of purchase, which is slightly worrying. What's more worrying is that the other half, the other 42%, so they don't care about brands at all, which is really bad. So we now know that we have literally the most minute opportunity to influence people when they're at that point in purchase. Is that a good use of our time? No. We're going to have to go further up the funnel if we want to actually influence these people. So now we know that part of the consumer journey, it's not for us. It's not for Tea-rific. So we're going to go further up the funnel. What are they doing up there? How can we influence them up there? What are they thinking about up there? So I thought to myself, I'm going to ask these people what motivates them to watch online video, in Ireland specifically. And they said, 56 of them actually said, they want to be entertained and they want to be inspired. Now, there's a few other ones in there, relaxing and escaping to learn something new, but over half of them have basically said this one reason. And that stands out to me. I don't know if it stands out to you. I'm starting to think, okay, they want recipes. They're thinking about kind of diet solutions. They want to relax. And the other thing, actually, I didn't put on the slide is here. I looked second to this. I looked, when are they watching that video? I want to know when they're watching that video. And they watch video in the evening more than any other time of the day. That's really interesting. So I'm thinking maybe I can start talking about recipes through online video to influence these people, half of them that will think about a brand, to think about me when they're in the shop. This starts getting me on my way to a much better strategy than what we had before. No wonder we're losing category or market share. Now, the second one I'm going to talk about is not something I'm going to go into in a huge amount of detail, but Google consumer surveys. Are people familiar with Google consumer surveys? No. Google consumer surveys are absolutely amazing, and they do what they say on the tin. They are consumer surveys, but you set them up. They're completely customizable. You can basically cut any sort of question you want, so they're incredibly, incredibly precise. They're very much about what you want to understand about your consumers, and you can get answers back within literally a number of days. So when you're thinking about getting deep understanding of your own consumer, this is very much an option you can consider. Now, these are paid for, they're not free. So you're going to pay a few cents per question that you ask. So you can basically decide you're going to pay loads or you're going to pay very little, but it does mean that you can get very, very, very personalized data back to you within the guts of a week. And that's really, really interesting. The other thing about consumer surveys is, or the biggest question I get asked, how do they work? Why would people fill out a survey? Why should I not go to a big market research agency when they know what they're doing? We basically know that people love content. We know they love content so much that when they're reading a little bit of an article and we say, will you answer a few questions and we'll give you the rest, they will. So that's what we do. They're reading content and we can basically say, if you'd like to finish reading this and if you fill out our survey, this is important, we'll give you the rest of the article. The other thing we've started doing is give people Google Play credit. So they can actually answer things and we give them credit and they can buy more in the Google Play Store. So you can be rest assured that we're very humane to your survey answers. All your victims are well looked after. This also means that you're getting basically very real-time insight, something you can do again and again. And because you're customizing the survey, you can run the next one, which is really interesting too. So you can start gathering data points over time, which allows you to actually develop trends for your business. And it's literally a fraction of the cost of traditional market research. So it's very much an option for anybody who's running a business, who's running it on a budget, and really needs this for business planning. In this particular instance, we didn't have time for Terrific because they may or may not be a real company, so we didn't run a consumer survey for that. We're going to move on to Google Trends. And as I said to you earlier, I lied about Think with Google. This is my favorite tool in the whole world to use. And we can use it for category, and we can use it for brand, and we can also use it for Zeitgeist. So we're going to play around with Google Trends a little bit today. And this is going to get us to the crux of the issue. I just know it with our Terrific issue. So, Google Trends. Who uses Google Trends? Hooray! I want more of you putting your hands up by the end of this. Google Trends is, you literally just go to Google Trends, that's what you type into Google, and it is completely developed, or we basically keep it developed and up-to-date platform, which looks at trends across the world. You can basically cut it by any geo, you can cut it by any time range, you can cut it into industry, you can basically just look at trends, you can look at keywords, you can look at brands. It is literally one of the easiest tools to use. And it's incredibly important in understanding trends over time and what people are associating with your brands. And this is where we need to grow a little bit of a thicker skin. Google Trends will tell you exactly what's happening. So you want the truth? Go here. If you don't, don't. We're going to use it for category here. So when we think about category, we want to look at interests and associations with categories. We want to look at maybe changing tastes in time, particularly with our tea and coffee issue. We can also look at stuff that's rising in the industry. And that's really valuable, I think. Because when we think about a lot of our advertisers before, they know what to do in the past, but things are changing so much quicker now, quicker than they ever have before. So being able to spot a rising trend before it becomes a trend gives you a competitive advantage. So it's one of these things to look out for here. So the first one, top and rising terms associated with tea searches. So what I basically did was put in tea. And I asked, look, for the last 5 years, and I want to know what are the top associated terms. So Google is looking at all the index terms on Google Search, on YouTube, on images, on news, and on shopping to tell you what consumers are associating most with tea. I find that mind-blowing. When I look here, I find something really surprising. I find afternoon tea is here. I also find tea party is here. And all of a sudden, we're not thinking product anymore. We're now starting to see that people think about tea as an occasion, as well as a product. And what could we do with that? Amazing. My head is spinning already with the ideas. The second thing I wanted to see is rising terms, as we talked about. What else is going on in the category? Bet you those pesky coffee guys are in there, and they're not. Okay? I was very, very surprised with this. What we have in here is skinny tea, fit tea. Everyone know the kind of fit tea that's in chemists at the moment? We're not going to talk about what it does. But basically, this diet tea is having very much a threatening effect on our category. It's not the coffee guys at all. It's these guys. So this is something we really need to think about. Do we want to really go head-to-head with these guys who are not selling what we perceive as real tea? They're not even selling in the same shops, but yet people are searching for it more than they ever have before. So we need to keep an eye on those guys. So think about that. Keep afternoon tea over here, keep skinny tea over here. But let's look at that a bit more, that occasion kind of, I'm getting really excited about that. So what can we do with that occasion here in Tea-rific? How is that an opportunity for our business? So what? So going to look a bit closer. I looked at afternoon tea in Ireland over the last 5 years, and I start seeing a trend. Can anybody else see the trend? There's a spike every single year. What is that? Can anybody tell me what they think that might be? We had one here. Mother's Day, not Christmas. We love our mums as much as we love tea. So that's really interesting. So there's certain occasions during the year that are actually driving this notion of afternoon tea. What else could we do? Could we manufacture things to actually have a bump in afternoon tea? Could we make new associations with afternoon tea? Funnily enough, I looked into this a bit further, which I don't have on the slides, and I wanted to see the top associated terms with afternoon tea. Could anybody tell me what they think that would be? The Shelburne. Very interesting. When I looked at rising terms for afternoon tea, what do you think it was on? The Morrison. And I actually have a friend who's just moved from the Shelburne to the Morrison, so I wonder if there's a correlation there. So now we know that people are thinking about decadence. They're thinking about afternoon tea as a treat. That's a whole new space for our brand to go into. So let's keep that in the back pocket when we come back to our learnings at the end. So now I'm going to go a bit broader. I'm going to look at the category as a whole. I'm not going to focus on tea. I want to know what's happening in that non-alcoholic beverage category that we talked about at the very start with Think Insights. Think with Google. What are the top terms in the non-alcoholic beverage category in Ireland? Coffee, unsurprising, they're always there. We kind of have to put up with that. The other one's tea, which is good, at least we're there. And then we have two others in there that are surprising to me. Starbucks and Nespresso. Now, I could get annoyed, I could get upset with that because they're searching for their brands and they're not searching for Tea-rific. But I'm going to go back to my hypothesis. I don't care if they're searching for coffee brands because we are looking to prove or disprove that tea is cool. That's all we're doing. Actually, people aren't searching for tea brands. When we go back into that kind of more objective lens, this is an insight. People are searching for coffee brands, but they don't search for tea brands. We're not seeing Lions in here. We're not seeing Barry's in here. They're not searching for tea brands at all. So we're not in that space. We're not top of mind. People are thinking of it just as maybe this occasion, maybe it's something they've always had, but they're definitely not thinking about it as luxury, and there's no brand that's coming to top of mind. That's something for us to capitalize on. So that's really interesting from the get-go. The other thing I saw on the kind of the rising topics on the other side, so these are things that people go off on other pages on the web and look at that are associated with this term or this category. Bulletproof coffee, so basically putting coconut or butter in your coffee, which was a big craze a few years ago. Instagram, so I had a quick look into that. So pictures of coffee, there's pictures of Starbucks coffee, the unicorn frappuccino they have at the moment. People are thinking of coffee in that really cool creative space. Not one single picture of tea was in there. We see the unicorn one from Starbucks that they've just released. And memes. And again, there was no tea memes that I could find. Tea is not that cool. So we have a big job to do. So when we're thinking about category and Google Trends, what are the things to ask yourself about your business? You work in Tea-rific right now, but you can go back to your day jobs after this. So when you're thinking about that, we think, are branded or generic terms dominating? Are people looking at brands, or are they looking at kind of what's happening in the category? How is the interest fluctuating? So thinking about that Mother's Day example, that's really interesting. What can we do about that? How do we compare to our competitors? Starbucks and Nespresso getting all the love, and we're not. What can we do to change that into an opportunity? Is there unexpected seasonality? Or what's causing changes in search traffic? These are things to think about at an industry level, at a category level, and not to get bogged down in what's happening in your brand. It's really easy to go there first, but it's much more valuable to have the oversight of the category before you go and do that. So we're going to move on to the brand side of things. And we're going to use Google Trends again. This time, we're going to change our thinking a little bit. We're going to explore how people are searching for your brand. We're going to have a look at what they're looking for in the same search session. So if they look at one thing over here, 3 minutes later, what are they looking for over here? This is really interesting if any of you are out there launching new products and you don't know how it's going to land and you don't necessarily have budgets to run Google consumer surveys. You can launch a product and see what people are associating with within 2 to 3 weeks. So what are the other search terms people are putting together with your brand, and how does that make you feel? Was that the perception you wanted to give them? Is it not landing properly? What are the top terms? Sorry, we just talked about that. And how does it stack up against competitors? So looking at your competitors, again, it can be slightly hazardous in terms of what you might find and how you might feel, but it's a really interesting one. So if we think back to that first article with Think with Google, we could see that, not necessarily on a brand level, but we could see water, smoothies, juice, and all of a sudden we layered on tea and coffee, and they were down here. So what's really useful with Google Trends when we're thinking about brand is you might have a little brand line that's going like this, and you're kind of happy with that. And then you overlay a competitor, and your line is down here, because they're getting way more searches and way more popularity than you are. So it's good to know where you're stacking up in terms of how top of mind you are and what the volume of search and interest is around your brand. What I did here in this kind of graph is I had a look at Costa, I had a look at Starbucks, and I had a look at Insomnia. And then I put Tea-rific. And actually nobody is searching for us at all. Nobody's searching for Tea-rific. Now, when I looked at Insomnia first, so there's a debate that goes on in our house about Insomnia coffee. We drink Insomnia coffee and obviously Tea-rific tea, but we drink Insomnia coffee. So I looked at Insomnia first and I was like, wow, that yellow line is all the way up here. And then I overlaid Costa and it was a little bit below Costa, but that was okay. They looked okay. And then I overlaid Starbucks and both of the lines fell down to about here. And we can see that people are searching for Starbucks way, way more than any other brand. That's really interesting. And when I drill down to that a bit more, what do you think the #1 associated search with Starbucks was? No, but that was up there. Opening hours. They're known for one of the most late opening hours in Dublin and Ireland, and particularly as a coffee chain. And people want to know exactly what that was. That's interesting. Coffee, for Costa, actually it was location, and there was opening hours in there as well. And with Insomnia, there wasn't those, so people weren't thinking about it in the same way. And Tea-rific obviously didn't even make the cut. So we have a job to do there. So then I want to look at our competitors, so our tea competitors to do with our brand. And for anybody who's been in Ireland for a long time, you'll probably know of the age-old debate between Lions and Barrys. We're going to find out who wins right now, in front of everyone, 370 witnesses. Lions! So basically, I had a look at Lions and Barrys here. Exactly the reaction I wanted. So actually, what was quite interesting here was Barry's seems to be much more, this is only for 2016, by the way. It's not for the whole last 5 years. But Barry's wins out early in the year, gets off to a really good start. And then they're kind of neck and neck all the way down to November, and Lions just blows it out of the park. So when you're looking at a trend like this, particularly with brands, it can be quite difficult when you're looking at this kind of spiky trends over time to see what I'm even looking at. And what's really, really useful about Google Trends, it will also give you your aggregated data down here. So we can see unequivocally that the blue line, which is Lions, has actually slightly won out on that. So now we're thinking about, when we go back to consumer barometer and we're really, really tying these together, we know that people are only thinking about one brand when they go to the shop. The others aren't thinking about any. And when we overlay this kind of thinking, actually, are they thinking Lions more than anything else? So that's given us a really, really interesting edge now on our competitive set. Are they the ones we need to be worried about? So now we have our skinny tea, we have Lions and to an extent Barry's, and we have the lads over in Starbucks. So they're the ones we need to worry about. Now we're getting a really, really clear picture of our category and how our brand is playing in that, which, by the way, is nothing at all. We've just realised that we have a huge job to do in terms of awareness for poor old Tea-rific. So then thinking about Google Trends for brand. When we're thinking about category versus trend, there's a few different questions you can ask. And it's useful to have these to hand when thinking about what you want to find out for your brand. Are people even looking for us? No, they're not when it comes to Tea-rific. What else are people searching for? Are they searching for memes? Are they looking for images? Are they looking for just opening hours? What are the top terms searched with my brand? So what's the perception? What are the associations people are making with my brand and my competitors' brands? And how does my brand stack up against my competitors? And as we saw, Starbucks are owning it. People are looking for them all over the place. But they're also looking for Insomnia, and they're also looking for Costa. They're also looking for Lions, and to an extent Barry's. You can tell what tea I drink at home. Which brings me to golden rule number 4. Even when you found nothing, you have still found something. Don't be disheartened if what you set out to find is not what you find. It still says something about what you're looking at. And when we didn't find Tea-rific on that slide, it means that actually the opportunity is to get people to think about Tea-rific. And that goes into our strategy straight away. Zeitgeist then. As we said, Zeitgeist is what's happening with the world at large, the changing culture, the trends, the emerging behaviours. And this is something Google Trends can help you with as well. And I don't work on the Google Trends team as much and all as you think I would, the amount I've been talking about it. But it does have a tab that is specifically dedicated to Zeitgeist. So if you go on there, you'll see what's trending today. You can see what's trending yesterday. You can see what's trending last year. We'll give you top charts for the last year. So we'll tell you who were the most top searched celebrities, male and female. What were the top searched foods? What were the biggest movies? And basically that's all to do with people's behaviour, what they were asking and how much time they spent with those queries, not how much money was put behind their promotion. This is really interesting for understanding what came out last year. What is actually really, really cool? Because we don't seem to know in Tea-rific what's cool anymore. We had it kind of wrong. The other thing is YouTube Trends Dashboard. So this is actually a tab within YouTube itself. It's worth saying that this does not change like YouTube does. So when you go on, you see a list of videos that are recommended for you. That's based on your preferences and your past behaviour. What this does is give you a completely clean view of what's trending in your market at that given time. So you can start seeing what kind of content people are talking about. And we think back as well to the kind of showing video in the evenings to our consumers because they're relaxing, they want to be inspired, and that's when we think we can influence them. We also need to know what to say to them. What kind of content's resonating and how should we think about our own creative and our own story? And this is an amazing way to do that. You're probably going to see a lot of carpool karaoke. It was really good. People love it. That's something to think about. And we did a study last year to see what was the number one reason people watched video, and it was actually humour. What we saw before that was emotion. So if you remember what we had before was basically the Christmas ads, people were sad. And then last year we had John Lewis come with the bouncing boxer. Humour is taken over from emotion. So keeping your finger on the pulse of those things is incredibly important. And that is rule number 5. Keeping your finger on the pulse. The world and its consumers are rapidly changing, and you need to be there with them if you want to stay up to date. So that's basically our 4 categories. We've gone on a little journey through all of them. Consumer, category, brand, and Zeitgeist. And we've used them to really get under the skin of Tea-rific and our tea drinking challenge. So what do we know now that we didn't know before? Online interest in tea has not declined, ladies and gentlemen. It has actually slightly increased over time. Consumers want cooler ways to drink all of their hot beverages, not just tea, but they're more health conscious than they ever were before. So we need to think about that. We know that people are associating tea with an occasion as well as the product, and I think that could be our key to success here. And the last one is that we know that our consumers are watching video to be inspired and entertained, and they're doing that in the evenings more than any other time in the day. So what are we going to do about it? There's 3 things that I can put into a strategy straight away. We can action these straight away. We can think about our positioning. Tea-rific is great and all, but it's been quite traditional. We haven't been that cool. Tea's cool, we're not cool, that's the issue. So actually, we need to move from traditional to vintage, which isn't that big a leap. We know they're thinking of the Shelburne. We know they're thinking of the Morrison. We know they want to bring their mummies for lovely tea. They want it to be decadent, and we can do that, actually. There's an opportunity to do that. Nobody's in our way. So our positioning needs to slightly change. Brand awareness. I mean, we all saw that. Nobody is looking for us. Nobody even knows we're there. So that's a critical thing we need to take action on straight away. We need to drive brand awareness, and not just about product. We need to drive it about the brand. And actually, we could probably do that with video. We could probably do that in the evenings. We even know how we could do that with the data we have. And we need some new initiatives. People are going to the shop. They're not thinking brand. They're buying tea. They're leaving. We need to play in that space out of the shop, maybe in the home, maybe in kind of the hotel. So we could run online competitions to win afternoon tea. We know that's hot. Or we could think about decadent tea recipes and have that on our YouTube channel and float that out to people in the evenings and they could put tea in their cocktails. Maybe they could make some of their food with tea, and Tearific is the brand for them. So we can actually really influence their consideration there. So it's very little with these tools. I already have a pretty good plan of how we're going to get out of the tea rut that we're in. So I'm going to sum up the 5 golden rules, because you can take these away for any other of the businesses you work for. I am going to fire you off from Tearific now. We've sorted the problem, so you're free to go. So think about these for your business. Think about applying these to everything you do without getting swallowed by the data monster. The first one, data is not an insight. Insight is an insight. Always ask yourself, so what? 2, always start with the hypothesis, unless you want to lose all of your time that you're never going to get back. Don't reinvent the wheel. Check if Google's done it for you. We probably have. 4, even when you find nothing, you have found something. And 5, keep your finger on the pulse. The world and all its consumers are rapidly changing, and you need to too. Thank you very much. So we have a very awkward mic for those of you that have been here before, and I'm quite scared of it. So we're going to throw it to people. So if you don't catch it, be nice and pass it to whoever was asking. So we have about 5 minutes, and we'll keep it for questions. So I can see you in the middle. I'm going to throw it maybe to row 3, and maybe you guys can throw it back. Are you ready? Row 3? This lady here? With glasses? You don't look that ready? Yeah? Okay. You got it! Woo!
Thank you, finally. Hi. My question is about the skills that you require in your team actually to analyze these insights. You know, at the moment, I'm building a team on insights, and we want to focus more not on the brand because it's just well known, but also on the quality and the service. Okay, and we want to distinguish ourselves from our competitors in that case. Yeah. So, what would be the kind of skills that you require in the team actually to analyze a proper insight and bring forward the services?
Are you talking about analyzing a website? Or are you
No, the consumers. The consumers.
So they're coming to your site and you want to know?
Yeah, exactly. And we offer services. Okay, and we want to distinguish from our competitors. But then I have this team, they have different skills, but we don't know just yet how to go there and analyze a proper insight.
Okay.
You see?
So
what is the kind of skills do you require in your team, actually? The data analysis or, these kind of things?
I think it depends on what you're doing. What we did today was an exercise in using all the tools to make a picture against an issue. That's easy to do. I think one of the most important thing you do need, particularly in a team, is a process. So if there's no consistency with your insight, and there's no consistency with your trends. You need to be doing the same thing over and over and over again to actually really build a robust trend. So process is important for your whole team. So everybody can't be off doing their own thing with different ways. You need to be able to have a consistent way to do things. I think being able to have people specialize in various different tools is also a real benefit. So being able to have somebody look at Google Analytics for an example. So you're looking at your e-com traffic, but it's equally important for somebody looking at the category. So being able to tap into some of these tools, or maybe some internal tools, or maybe the likes of eMarketer, that you can give that lens and you can give that canvas. So you can look what's going on in your business, but you can also look at what's going on in the world at large. So it's kind of a difficult question to kind of answer for your business specifically, but I think the number one thing for me anyway, and my experience, is consistency and having a process throughout your team, making sure that it's standard, so you're happy with the robustness of the data, and also having people specialize, but actually have enough of them to build a full picture. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just up behind you there, actually, there's a question. I can't see kind of past that row, by the way, because it's kind of blinding lights. So if somebody sees a hand, throw it back up to them.
No, you don't need to look, it's fine. So, you mentioned that the surveys, right, that people answer them, and that's how you compile data. I was wondering, right, with those surveys, are they blocked by uBlocker and AdBlocker? And how are you sure people aren't answering the questions to remove the survey so that they can just continue reading as opposed to answering honestly?
Yeah. So the first question there about ad blockers will depend on the actual site itself. So that's something I would encourage you to look at the Google Consumer Surveys site. It will give you more information on that. So it will depend. The second thing is that you can ask hundreds and thousands of people. So as with all surveys and as with all research, we won't give you an answer unless we have something statistically relevant. So what you will find is obviously there will be skews in answers, but the robust trend you should see will be the average norm. So we will look for things to be statistically significant, and you'll get that in your response. So there'll be bar charts, there'll be whatever. You can drill into it, and being perfectly candid with you, when you look at the responses, you can see what's bogus in there. So you'll be able to drill down, and if there's something that doesn't make any sense, we don't do it. We introduced the Google Play credit because we find that certain people love answering questions also. So we can actually say to very specific audiences, so if you want to talk to, let's say, mums with kids, we know who's mums with kids and we can ask them the questions. There are people that will do that, so they can sign up to also be people that answer questions, and they're people that will give you particularly valid answers. So it's the same with all research. You know, it's not an exact science whatsoever, but what we can do to kind of safeguard against it is making sure that it's statistically significant and that you're pulling the trends versus each and every person's response, because that wouldn't really serve your business or kind of serve the challenge.
Thanks.
No problem.
I have a question. So
that was easy. That's going.
Is there any possibility with the Google surveys to input your own data to see what the data at large versus your own data that you're getting in?
So not directly, but you can ask things about your own data. So you can basically put in images, you can put in videos, you can put in text, you can basically put in a number of different things. You can put in scales, so it's incredibly customizable. So what you could potentially do, and something that I've done before, is you can take a logo, or you can take maybe like for new product design, or if you want to test something out, and you can seed that out and get people to respond on it. Consumer surveys are in the consumer bucket of insights tools that we have because it's very much about sentiment. So it's not something I would really be overlaying on your own data. I would be using your own brand maybe and your own collateral, your own language, but you're really trying to get how people feel about you and you're looking about their behavior. If you were to kind of input your own data, I'd be suggesting something like analytics. So you can basically upload your own first-party data, or you can basically take that first-party data from the web and then you can stack that up against maybe with category data. It depends, again, you have to go back to golden rule number 2, how that's this. But it's consumer surveys are actually much more around sentiment and behavior and feelings, fuzzy feelings. But if you want to use your own data, I would suggest using your own stuff in the questions, like a logo, an image, a video, etc.
Thank you.
I think we have one over here in the corner.
Oh, okay. Actually, I'll show it and then maybe.
He says chance it, the man beside him doesn't look so.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, great. Laura, just a quick question on Google Trends.
Yes.
So you said you can search by location. So my question is, like, how accurate in terms of location? Is it just by country, or can you do, say, if I'm from Mayo, say, can you search just by a county, or what's the geographical sort of accuracy?
Yeah, you'll find and it's a really, really good question. In bigger countries with more search data, you can go more granular. In Ireland, it's not always that easy. It also looks at IP mass, which is getting a bit technical here, but so for some things, so when I looked at tea, for instance, and I looked at that, it gave me county-specific data because we searched so much for tea. We're actually the 10th country in the world in terms of like our volume of tea searches, which is huge. Like we're 10th behind like China and Sri Lanka, and then all the other lads are down the back. So actually, we searched tea a lot, and that gave me enough information to look at counties. So the ones that were coming up were all Midlands. So we were getting way more in the Midlands than we were like on Dublin and all of the kind of that side of things, where coffee was actually being searched an awful lot more.
So Terrific should set up in maybe Athlone or somewhere
Maybe
like that.
Athlone. So are you looking for a business partner? Because I mean, Terrific's in the Dire Straits. But when you think about things that are a little bit more kind of niche, like your brand, for some reason it comes up as Dublin and then Lucan separately. But actually we have an IP mast out in Lucan. So you'll need to kind of take it as it comes. Again, it's not something to be making business decisions on. So like, where should I set up unless it's Terrific? And actually in the States, you'll find very, very, very robust data by state and city because the searches are so much higher. So kind of the more searches you have, the more accurate the data. And that's why it's good to always have kind of a proxy. So if you're looking for quite a niche word, put in quite a broad word and see where you stack up to that. And then you'll be able to understand how much search behavior is happening.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much.
Sorry, that's a bit vague, but
No,
it depends on what you're looking at.
Good, yeah. I don't know how. Watch your heads.
Hi. This morning seems to be very B2C orientated, so business to consumer. What's your thoughts on B2B, particularly in services?
So I actually have managed B2B clients, and we're not as far away from B2C as you think. So it isn't a whole different ballgame. The premises are still the same. The insights are a little bit harder to get to. So I think the first thing to always remember with B2B, and this is obviously very specific to maybe the experience that I've had, is that you need to think about your audience. And something that came up with me in the last 2 years with a B2B client was really, really niche. But it was the difference between, in a food company, between market research and marketeers. And actually, we were able to use Google Trends to see the difference in what those two types of people were talking about in the service industry, particularly with these ingredients. And what we saw was that market research guys were looking up ingredients, really, really, really specific nutritional terms. They were looking during the day, 9 to 5, 9 to 6. And what we were finding with marketing people was that they were looking for locations, they were looking at how to get around, they were looking for offices. So where do I go to this office to meet this person? And they were looking at that in the evening time, and they're more likely to actually look at others, maybe like white papers and sites and all of that as well. So it's not unfathomable to think that you can use these tools for that. I think you need to get a little bit more strict with what you're trying to figure out. And B2B, there's a lot of search there's a lot of searching that goes on with really, really, really specific terms, and they're quite unique to certain businesses. If you're talking about telecommunications, or you might be talking about like software, for instance, you're going to have a really specific term that not that many people are searching because anybody in the industry knows those terms. But you might have big cohorts of kind of searches around other things. So I think it's about getting smart with what you're trying to figure out. These tools most definitely can serve that. You can look in Consumer Barometer to actually go down to things like services. You can look, there's some B2B in there as well. And obviously Google Trends is completely customizable. I would also really encourage you to go to Think with Google, because we understand that there's kind of a bigger challenge there with B2B. It's not altogether completely removed from B2C, but the language is different and the sales cycle can be a lot longer sometimes, and it can be an awful more, very much niche in terms of your audience. So I would encourage you to look there. But what I would say is, what I found anyway, it's not a million miles away in principle. It's just that the actual content is quite different, or the output.
Okay, thank you.
So we have 2 minutes left. We probably have time for one more question if anybody would like to ask a question. No? That is me, folks. Thank you so much for coming along. Really appreciate it.